Go ahead and talk about how you have observed changes in your department or your community since 9/11.
Sure. I think since 9/11, I think local policing has changed dramatically in a number of ways. I think first and foremost, we're concerned now with things that we never worried about prior to 9/11, like infrastructure protection as it relates to water distribution centers or gas distribution centers. These are things that we never really thought much about prior to 9/11. Specifically right here in my county, I think we have about 90% of all the agricultural and culinary water for the Wasatch Front that resides up here. And it actually, the headwaters of 3 large rivers. I think the 3 largest rivers in northern Utah. So we've got some infrastructure here, and we've got some natural resources that affect the large population base along the Wasatch Front. So we have to be concerned about that. We have to be aware that there are those folks who may want to engage in terrorist activities that may want to come to this county, a semi-rural county, particularly on the east side, and may want to disrupt those infrastructure, way stations.
And does that mean you're patrolling that infrastructure more than you used to, if you ever did at all? Or what? Talk to me about how you specifically protect those.
I think absolutely there's additional patrolling that goes on. Also, we liaise a lot more with the folks who run those facilities. Suspicious activity is reported a lot more readily than it would have been perhaps in the past. There's just a general heightened awareness of what goes on in and around those facilities. And, it's a variety of things, including extra patrolling. And on certain, if we receive intelligence, that's the other part of this, I think, that's really changed, is the intelligence gathering. And, this whole notion of intelligence-based policing. I think as it relates to terrorism, that's been something that has changed significantly in the last 15 to 20 years. Even prior to 9/11, we were moving that direction, but I think 9/11 really, I think it demonstrated the need to move down that path even faster than we were. So, yeah, all of the above.
Has protecting that infrastructure and the other aspects of post 9/11 taken you away or deflected your attention from those conventional crimes in the community, whether it's theft or domestic violence or drugs?
I think it's been one of those duties that it's been in addition to. I don't know that it's deflected or if it's taken our focus off of those conventional type crimes, but what it's done is it's added additional responsibilities, often without additional personnel and additional money. So there is a stress there and there is a strain, particularly as this the economic difficulties that our country's having right now, as that has deepened and become worse, then clearly law enforcement's additional duties that have been imposed upon us in the post 9/11 world have become increasingly difficult to manage. There's no question about that.
What resources have you received from state or federal government that you would attribute to what happened on 9/11?
Well, I think the biggest one here as it relates to hardware. We were able to get through a federal grant our remotely operated submersible for the large bodies of water that we have in and around the county. We can go into the water, and you've seen some of the dramatic aspects or capabilities of that particular asset at Strawberry when we were able to go down and get the bodies that were deposited at the bottom there. But the primary reason I think that we got that from the feds was to go and look at dam structure underwater, look to see if there's any explosive devices or anything that could damage the dam. That's one of the big reasons we were able to get that. That's the only submersible or ROV submersible of that size and capability in northern Utah. The closest one to us is Glen Canyon Dam. So we get deployed all over northern Utah, and we have to go even into Idaho and Colorado and Montana if asked to do so. And we've been asked to deploy it out of state several times.
What dam were you referring to a moment ago?
Well, Glen Canyon is the one that down south has
Right.
got that one. But up here, we've got a variety. We've got Deer Creek, we've got Jordanelle, we've got Rockport, we've got Echo, all of those. There are large bodies of water up here in and around the region.
Has there been other things? I know a lot of sheriffs in this state have gotten mobile command centers purchased with Homeland Security money. Did you have other stuff like that?
Oh yeah, no question about it. There's been additional assets, but that's probably the biggest one, the ROV. We've also been able to dedicate resources to the state SIAC, and we've been able to get information from them as well. Not on a full-time level, but on a part-time basis, we've been able to work with them and get as much information to them as we can. Because again, like I said earlier, that intelligence that we get is so critical. Because what we have not been able to get a lot of is additional staff and additional monies for full-time employees. So we have to police smarter, and intelligence allows us to do that.
You talked about some of the infrastructure and how your attitude toward it has changed. You also have big events in your county. Sundance is here every year. In the wintertime, you frequently have some sort of winter sports event, whether it's a ski event or bobsledding or something like that. You get a lot, in summertime even, you get a lot of visitors to this county, just people to recreate. Have you changed the way you police or protect those kinds of events since 9/11?
I think we've had to. Anytime you've got a large group of people together, you've got a potential target. And you're right, this is a year-round destination here in Summit County. We get people in the summer, winter, and everything in between. We have had to police differently those large-scale events. We have to consider the possibility that terrorist activities could occur. A lot of our tactics we don't divulge to the public, but I can tell you that a big part of that is intelligence. A big part of it is working together with police agencies. Sometimes the cooperation in the past has not been the best, but I can tell you that in the post 9/11 world, I've seen a huge difference in the way that police agencies work together and consolidate information and consolidate resources. Prior to 9/11, you didn't see that. You saw a lot of kingdom building, and you saw a lot of people that were in their own world and didn't want to share information, share resources, and do all those things. So again, that's another, I think, positive benefit to the attacks, on the World Trade Center and elsewhere.
You sit on the post board, so you're familiar with the kind of training that new peace officers in this state get now. What do you see the new recruits getting trained in that you did not get trained in when you were a recruit?
They are having to consider all types of information, and no piece of information is too small as it relates to terrorism and trying to get ahead of that particular movement. What they're being trained in, not only gathering but also dissemination and also just how important small pieces of information are. I think that's been one of the biggest things. When I went through the police academy in the early 90s, that was something that was not on the radar screen. It was something that we just didn't feel a need to do. We were worried about investigating robberies and rapes and homicides and how to conduct traffic stops. Well, now part of conducting a routine traffic stop may be that you have information on a possible terrorist suspect, and just the slightest bit of information can lead to an arrest. It can lead to breaking a case that's been investigated for years wide open. If you look at some of the terrorism cases in this country, Timothy McVeigh was stopped on a routine traffic stop. There's been a lot of information garnered on those types of seemingly innocuous police activities. So, the recruit now has to be aware of the bigger picture, has to be aware that a routine traffic stop in Utah could break a case in New York State wide open.
Okay. When you first became a police officer or you were a cadet, did it ever cross your mind you would have these kinds of concerns?
No, absolutely not. You know, when I first got into this business, I thought I would be doing all the types of conventional policing that you would normally associate with local law enforcement. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that we would be, you know, thinking about global terrorism and how it can affect our population, you know, right here in little old Utah. I never thought that would be the case, but I can tell you that it's a very real thing.
Yeah. You've heard a lot of discussion in the last 10 years about civil liberties and whether we should give away some of those to better protect us. I know police officers have always had to be conscious of civil liberties, but has that discussion changed among peace officers as well in the last 10 years?
I think that there's been a general understanding that you know, civil liberties, that in some cases we have to give a little more than we've given in the past. I'm very conscious of that. I'm a civil libertarian at heart. I believe strongly in our constitutional rights here in America, and I think we constantly are trying to deal with that balancing act. You know, we live in a constitutional republic that weighs heavily upon the rights of the general citizen, and we've had to strike a balance there, and we've had to, you know, look at the airport in particular. Look at all the rights that we've had to give away there in an effort to maintain a safe and you know, sterile environment where everybody can fly safely. On the street level, I don't know that we've seen an erosion of those civil liberties at all. I think there are specific places like the airport where you've seen some heightened awareness and maybe a little bit of an erosion there. And I think we need to be very cautious of that. I think what makes America great is that we do have the rights that we have, and we've been able to strike that balance really well. You look at other countries across the world, and they've had to basically enact police states to keep themselves safe. And I don't know that we ever want to get to a situation like that here in America. You know, in America, we are the police. You know, because we don't dedicate the monies and the resources to lock anything down, really. We expect the public to be our eyes and ears out there, and if there's something that is suspicious, we expect people to report that and be understanding of what we're trying to do. But on the flip side of that, we have a very sacred responsibility to protect the constitutional rights of everyone who lives here in America and who visits here.
If you don't feel qualified to answer this, you don't have to, but I don't know how much you've traveled. Have you seen what goes on in some other countries in terms of security, and what do you think that either the United States or Utah or Summit County could learn from those, and what do you think we're doing better than those other countries?
I have traveled extensively. I think that there are some things that they do that we have learned from, specifically as it relates to intelligence, understanding that as much information you can gather, you know, the better off you're going to be in a security environment. I think that's probably the big one. You look at places like Great Britain and some other Western European countries as it relates to videos. And the proliferation of those videos and some of the facial recognition technology that's out there and some of the other things. I think that there are some applications that can be used here in America. But again, there's no other nation on the face of the earth that is concerned with civil liberties like the United States. And again, I think that's what separates us. I think that's what makes us great. But you know, civil libertarians across this country need to understand that if we're going to make this a safe environment, that in certain circumstances where they can be justified, you know, there's going to be somewhat of an erosion there to try to keep this place safe. Every time we enact a security measure, the folks that are trying to enact terror in this country, they go out and they find a means to defeat that. So we constantly are trying to stay ahead of the game, and that's a very costly, a very difficult endeavor. And you know, we need the help of the American public. They need to understand that we have their best interests at heart, and we have to prove that to them. We can't be engaged in activities and be caught doing things that makes the public suspicious. And I think in law enforcement, we've been guilty of some of that in the past. And we need to make sure that the entire process is transparent, that there's always civilian oversight with what we do. and that we do not get into a position where we're a police state and the police start looking more like a military force or an occupying force. I would never want to see that, and I don't think Americans would ever tolerate that either.
I asked you earlier if terrorism concerns deflected your attention from conventional crimes, so I better ask the other question of that is, have you solved conventional crimes that maybe you wouldn't have been able to solve in the last 10 years because you've learned something from 9/11 or gotten some piece of equipment or lesson from 9/11?
You know, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head as it relates to that, but I can certainly conceive of that. Yeah. You know, as technology continues to grow and because the necessity to implement new procedures have come upon us, I can definitely see, you know, that there is probably cases like that across the country, but I can't think of one here.
Okay. Sometime in the last 10 years, have you ever gotten the phone call and you thought to yourself, this is it, or this could be it? And you don't have to tell me what it was, but did you ever really think terror might be at Summit County's doorstep? There's
been a couple of times where I thought we had some pretty good information that would lead us to believe that we had potential for that. Thankfully, follow-up investigation proved that that was not the case, or at least we believe that at this juncture. But there's no doubt about it. It's always in the back of your mind. It's something that you're always thinking about. You said it best. We have a lot of large-scale events here. And I would think that for a potential terrorist or a potential terrorist act, this would be a place that folks might think of. And I think the message that we send to all of them is that we are doing everything in our power to avert any type of tragedy of that magnitude from occurring here. So the reality is we're always thinking about it. We're always planning for it. And the difficulty that's come to bear, I think, over the last couple of years in particular, is this economic recession has made it very difficult for us to keep pace with what we need to be doing, because my budget has been reduced. I know that law enforcement budgets across the state have been reduced. They continue to be reduced. We've lost manpower and the ability to put additional peace officers on the street, and we aren't the only ones. So we need to understand that we've got to prioritize here. I've talked a lot about the whole notion of essential versus non-essential services, and as this economic recession deepens, I think government legislatures are going to have to start really defining what is an essential government service and what is something that is non-essential and that government can only do when times are good. That's a conversation that's going to have to be had, because if we continue to reduce expenditures on law enforcement and the criminal justice system in general, we are going to become increasingly vulnerable to terrorist-type events, in my opinion.
I'm out of questions. If there's something I haven't asked or something else you want people to know, go ahead and share it now.
You know, I think what people need to understand most about what 9/11 did to criminal justice was this, is that prior to that, there was a lot of fiefdoms. There were a lot of folks that felt they were very unwilling to share information. They were very unwilling to work with allied law enforcement agencies. Not everyone, but there were certainly those that was a prevailing attitude. And I think post 9/11, you have had a lot of cooperation. You've had consolidation of resources in a much better way. You've had sharing of intelligence. You've had a lot of things that just didn't go on. So I think the public needs to rest assured that law enforcement is a lot more efficient now than it's ever been. If there's a silver lining to that cloud at all, you know, hopefully when a tragedy occurs, hopefully you've learned something for it, and I think that from it, and I think law enforcement has done that. I think law enforcement has learned some lessons. Not to say that we're perfect, not to say that we don't need to continually look to improve our operations, but I can tell you that there has been a dramatic change in the way we've conducted business, particularly as it relates to relationships between the federal government, local governments, and even state governments as well. So if there's anything to be, I guess, if there's cause for celebration at all for the public, it's that they're getting a better product as it relates to law enforcement and the criminal justice system.